it is a real pleasure to introduce the first of our keynote speakers. And it is a real pleasure and honor for me to be able to introduce someone that I have known for many, many years. We've not seen each other for quite a long time, actually, but I have known Shaun for a very long time. I don't want to embarrass Shaun, but Shaun is someone that I would consider to be a pioneer of the customer experience profession. Some of you, not me, but some of you might be too young to have been working when Shaun started to really push the customer experience conversation. He is the founder of the world-renowned organization Smith+co and the co-author of 5 acclaimed books. Shaun has been there, seen it and done it, and it is a real pleasure to have him as our first speaker. So please join me in welcoming Shaun to our virtual stage. Welcome, Shaun. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you everybody for joining today. This is fantastic. It's a delight and an honor to have the opportunity of opening this fantastic day. Well, the theme of the day is transformation, change, the future of CX. And that seems to me to be an incredibly appropriate theme for the day, because if we think about what's happened over this last year with COVID-19, that has really created fundamental change the way that consumers are behaving. And we really need to think as CX professionals about how we respond to that change. And that got me thinking about the changes that we've seen. I mean, if we think of CX, we've seen that it's moved the focus in brands from focusing on products to services to experiences, to those higher order experiences that really appeal to our emotional needs. But if we think about what's happened in COVID-19, we've seen consumers shift back to the focus on products, basic products. We see people queuing for toilet paper and pasta. So the question is, what does that mean for CX? Is there a role for CX? Well, let me share my screen and we will attempt to answer that question together. Just sharing here. Okay. So hopefully everybody should now be seeing my screen. And the question is customer experience even relevant anymore? Well, we can, one of the ways of predicting the future is to actually look at the past. And what I'd like to do is to share with you this piece of research. Some of you may be very familiar with WPP Cantor, which is one of the largest agencies in the world. And every year they do a survey called Brand Z. It's a huge survey, incredibly robust data. 3.8 million consumers participate in 71,000 brands across 51 different markets. It's massive. And if you look at this data, what you can see here is that over the last 14 years or so, since 2006, they've tracked it every single year. And if you look at the top orange band, these are what they call the top 10 most powerful brands in the world, headed up by brands like Apple and Amazon. The next band, the blue band, are the top 100 most powerful brands in the world. The yellow band is the Standard & Poor's 500, so the US index, and the bottom brand is the MSCI index, which is a general market index. The point about this, though, is if you look over those last 14 years, strong brands have outperformed the market by a significant degree. But look at this, and this makes it even more interesting. If we look back at the financial services crisis in 2008, look what happened. All of the markets declined, but if you look at the orange and the blue bands, they recovered much faster. Now, look again at what we've just experienced recently. If you look at the far right of this graph, you may just see April 2020, there was a massive decline in the valuation of these brands, but it very quickly recovered. For the orange brands, they're already recovering. So what's the point of this? The point of this is to say that we know that customer experience is important. We know that having a strong brand is important, but it's particularly important in a crisis, which we have now. Now let's look at this a bit further. What Brand Z also looked at was the drivers of strong brands. So what makes these powerful brands powerful? What makes them strong? And a key ingredient is customer experience. So they separated them into those that gave a relatively higher customer experience and those that gave a relatively lower customer experience. All great, but relatively higher or lower. And what you can see is those that give the higher, the stronger customer experience outperform the others by about 5 times. So once again, we know customer experience is important, but it's even more important in a crisis. So let's move on. And I think this is summed up really well by Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, who said that bad companies are destroyed by crisis, good companies survive them, but great companies are improved by them. And I think as CX professionals, we have the opportunity to really help our organizations, our brands, to thrive and be more successful and be more improved as a result of this crisis. The question is, how? How do we do that? Well, I think to be a brand that thrives, we need to do 3 things. And the first of those things is act on purpose. And acting on purpose is about being really clear about your purpose. Earlier on, Greg shared the definition of customer experience professionals, in a sense, what our purpose is. And it became very clear. And every brand, I believe, has to be really clear about what its purpose is, the value that it creates for its customers in order to be successful. The second thing we need to do is make it personalized. And that's particularly important in a crisis. Consumers want to feel that brands care about them. They want to feel that organizations are doing things which are going to meet their needs and help them. So making it personalized is even more important. And finally, moving with pace. We know that we have to be agile. We have to move quickly. We can't afford to allow traditional ways of working to prevent us from reacting and meeting our customers' needs. So moving at pace. Let's look at each of these in turn. So starting with acting on purpose, my most recent book was called Act on Purpose, Delivering a Branded Customer Experience That People Love. And we studied brands around the world that are great in terms of giving customer experience. And one of the ingredients we found is true for all of them is that they have a strong sense of purpose. And it's not making money. Money is a result. Profit is a consequence of being great with customers. It's a consequence of delivering your purpose. So acting on purpose is very, very important. The second thing we need to really think about is the type of purpose. And in our book, what we looked at was that there are 3 types of purpose in organizations. The first is the brand purpose, if you will, the customer purpose. And that's about creating value for your best customers and really understanding why you exist at all. The second type of purpose is the more traditional one. It's the commercial purpose. It's making profit. It's giving returns to shareholders. And what we've seen over the last 50 years or so is that many organizations have adopted the teachings of economists, academics like Milton Friedman, for example, who said that the primary and only purpose of an organization is to create shareholder value. And many organizations have acted in that belief. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that with many organizations. Consumers are becoming increasingly disappointed and disenfranchised with those organizations that only exist to make a profit. The third type of purpose, of course, is the social one. And if you are a charity, that may be your only purpose, but we would argue that every organization today has to act in the interest of society at large. Now, the question is, where do you start? Well, we believe the way you start and where you start is to deliver your brand purpose, the value to your customers. Because if you do that well, then you will be profitable. That will happen. And if you're able to do that in a way which is consistent with how you exist in society, then you'll be allowed to continue. So let me give you a really good example of that. If we take Amazon, Amazon's purpose is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And as you probably know, Amazon, alongside Apple, is the most valuable company in the world. Being the Earth's most customer-centric company has led Jeff Bezos and Amazon to initiate many things around the customer experience, to do things which several years ago, many years ago, we wouldn't have believed possible. And yet they have innovated and initiated all of these things to improve the experience because of that belief, that purpose. Now, as a result of that, they have become the most profitable company in the world. And not surprising, they have delivered huge returns to shareholders. And if Amazon continues to do that in an environmentally sustainable way, if it pays more attention to its employee experience and to being a good citizen, it will be allowed to continue. So that is a great example of getting this purpose in balance. But it starts with the brand, it starts with the customer. And interestingly enough, in December last year, the New York Times ran a full-page advertisement from the World Economic Forum that runs the Davos Summit. And that one-page advertisement in the New York Times said that purpose is the fourth industrial revolution. And the whole theme at Davos was around the notion of purpose. So if you haven't thought about your purpose, you should. It provides the context for the customer experience. A good example of this is a client of mine, Aspire Healthcare. It's the largest healthcare provider in the UK, very successful organization. And we had the privilege of working with the leadership team last year to help them define their purpose, which was making a positive difference to our patients' lives through outstanding personalized care. Now, the interesting thing was we had just finished that work. We'd finished designing the new experience and communicating that to all of the employees when COVID-19 hit. And the interesting thing was that the organization, unlike many of the competitors who simply increased their prices, immediately made all of their resources, their people, their equipment, their technology, and made it available to the National Health Service to help deal with COVID-19 patients. They also personally communicated with all of their own clients to say, we're prioritizing the community and we're putting or postponing non-urgent care, and we will communicate personally with you once we're able to sort of re-engage. And it was incredibly powerful. They were able to very quickly mobilize all of their resources to help the crisis through, and at the same time provide a great experience for their customers. And it was interesting because I spoke with John Forrest, who's the COO, and what he told me was that they were able to mobilize very quickly because they had the opportunity of communicating in a very different way, and we call it loose tight. Most organizations are very tight when it comes to setting guidelines or standards or procedures or policies, but very loose when it comes to telling their people, what does the brand stand for? What's our purpose? What kind of experience do we want to create for our customers? How do we want them to feel? And we advocate reversing those two things. We suggest that if you're tight about your purpose, if you're tight about the experience you want to create, and a little bit looser about the how, then what you get is a nice cycle of creativity leading to, within a structure, leading to more creativity. And John told us that they were able to innovate very quickly because of that. Let's look at the second dimension, which is about making it personalized. And I said earlier that in a crisis, customers want to feel recognized. They want to feel that they're individuals. They don't want to feel like a number. And yet also many organizations have actually treated them in a very transactional way. Many of you on the call are in markets where you have great banks. Unfortunately, the UK is not one of them. The financial services market in the UK is more typified by its mediocrity than anything else. But there are one or two exceptions, and one of them is a brand by the name of First Direct. Started about 25 years ago, and as the name implies, it was the first direct bank. It was the first bank that you could deal with online or through a call center. And it's been hugely successful. Over those years, they have won numerous awards. They typically have the highest net promoter score in the UK. And during the crisis, they put this on their website. They said, we're still available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We haven't closed once and we don't intend to. You will always get through to a real person. So it's not press button 1 or press button 2. You phone, you get straight through to a real person. And even though the volumes went up hugely, they were able to resource to enable still protect that important principle. So their amazing service continued. They wrote to me, I'm a customer, and they wrote a personal letter to me and said, because of what's happening, we are going to double the element of overdraft, the free overdraft element for all of our customers. And over that limit, we're going to halve the interest rate. So as a customer, I had twice or double the amount of overdraft. And then if I wanted to make a loan, it was half the rate. Interestingly enough, one of their main competitors, which is Lloyds Bank in the UK, their slogan is by your side, all right? So we're here for you, if you will. But how did they behave? Well, interestingly enough, what they did was to reduce their interest rates on deposits to 0.01%. Now, to put that in perspective, that is £1 interest if you've got £10,000 saved over a year, negligible. They also introduced what they called, laughingly, a personalized overdraft rate, which was nearly 50%, double that of First Direct. So that's an example of, in the first case, First Direct being a purpose-led organization, and in the second case, Lloyds Bank being very much a profit-led organization. So the point is this: it's not about having a purpose, it's about behaving on purpose. So we talked about being personalized. Now I encourage you as CX professionals to really think about how you can reach out and make it personal for your customers. And the third thing and last thing we can look at is moving at pace. One of the industries which has the fastest life, if you will, the fastest way of operating is, of course, Formula One. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the pit stop. And this was the world winning pit stop, fastest pit stop ever from Red Bull, Max Verstappen, last year in an incredible 1.82 seconds. And the question is, how do you operate at that kind of speed? Well, it's through collaboration rather than competition. And in fact, 5 of the Formula One teams have grouped together to use their technology and their engineering to create ventilators. And they call it Project Pit Lane. They're collaborating together around that common cause. Now, you may say, well, it's all very well for Formula One, but what about business? Well, interestingly, 2 of the largest and most competitive farmers in the world, GSK and Sanofi, are working together to come up with a vaccine for COVID-19. So they're collaborating around creating that vaccine. So sometimes your competitors become your collaborators in the interests of the customer experience. So let's pull this together. Final thing is really, when you're in a crisis, when you need to move quickly, sometimes you really need to pivot and repurpose your teams. You need to refocus them. And one of our clients, Burberry, that we worked with on Experience some years ago, did just that. And in fact, one of the managers from the National Health Service wrote to Burberry and said, is there any way you could help us with making masks? And in fact, what they did was repurpose their factory in the north of England to very quickly start making masks. I'm coming to the end of the time. So let me finish by answering the question. So is customer experience relevant anymore? Well, if you define customer experience as some sort of gold-plated service, the answer is probably no. If, however, you define customer experience as we did in our first book 20 years ago, that customer experience is providing a consistent, intentional, differentiated, and valuable experience to your customers, the answer is yes, it's still very valid. Because the fundamentals of business don't change despite the crisis. And the fact is that if you have a strong brand, a clear purpose, customer focus, and aligned people, you will thrive. But what I will say is that over the years, as customer experience has grown and evolved, more and more businesses have come in to the market, and it's become perhaps a bit more blurred and a bit more fragmented as a result. And the trouble with that is that, for those who are in the research business, say they're selling research, NPS, whatever it might be, they say all you need to do is measure and your customer experience will be great. For those who are selling software, they say, buy our product and your customer experience will be great. And for those who are in the transformation business, they say, you know what, work on your employee experience and train your people and your experience will be great. And your answer is, well, no, it won't. Not unless you take a holistic view of it. So my recommendation is use this crisis to rethink your purpose and reboot your organization. I hope you've enjoyed this. There will be a detailed white paper available on the speaker page on the website if you want to read more about this, or of course, if you want to get my book, you'll get even more information. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Shaun. In fact, you've just answered some of the questions that the audience are asking. So again, a virtual round of, I shall applaud on behalf of the global audience that are listening to you. It's so lovely to hear from you. And in fact, I feel that we're slightly shortchanged, that we only get 15 minutes or so, but 15 minutes is better than nothing. There are some questions that are coming in from the audience, but in the interests of time, if we don't get to your questions, we will ensure that your questions are sent to the presenters so they can respond to you afterwards. That's just for the audience. A question that I am desperate to ask you, Shaun, and I think we've only got time for me to ask this one question, which is why I'm going to take artistic license, being the host, to ask it. A question that I am often asked is, I get all of this stuff with purpose, but that doesn't make money. How would you respond to a leader that says, you know, well, yeah, so it's all nice. It's all nice, soft and fluffy, but how is purpose going to make me money now?
Well, I think fundamentally the answer to that question is purpose does make money. If that purpose is of value to your customers and if you execute it, it will make you money. And you only need to look at research from Edelman, for example. They have all kinds of statistics that show the correlation between purpose-led organizations and being very, very profitable. The fact is, if you focus on profit, you take short-term decisions that hurt the long-term results of the business.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I'm sure almost everyone, in fact, I'm seeing some of the comments coming through, which are all completely agreeing with you. I am sure you have found what Shaun has shared incredibly valuable. Do make sure to get the white paper once it's on the website. Do connect with Shaun if you're not already. If you're not already, you've missed out. And do make sure that you follow all of Shaun's work going forward. Additionally, get the book. This is only one of 5. So if you are an academic student of all things customer experience, then please do get a book from Shaun. I'm sure if you ask him nicely, he might even sign one for you, but we shall see. So once again, thank you so much, Shaun, for being with us this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure.